Hello, I'm Bob Radocy.
I'm Debi Latour.
And we're here with a series, some episodes, to empower people, empowering prosthetics. That's the title of the episodes that we have here. We're here to help you out. We want to empower persons with hand absence or impairments, and we're here to provide you with knowledge and share with you the kind of knowledge and experience that we have with between us over 100 years of personal experience in prosthetics.
So in this episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about the technology itself, specifically focusing on the materials and the fabrication process.
So why we're here, again, we want to empower you. We want to share the knowledge that we have about our experience in prosthetics. We've each had many prostheses throughout our lives of a variety of different types of technologies, and those technologies over the last 30, 40, 50 years have evolved and they've changed. So we personally have seen a lot of changes in the way prosthetic technology has evolved, and we want to share with you what's been out there, what's current, and some of the various options that are available. Mm-hmm. Who we are a little bit. We covered this in episode number 1, but I've been an amputee since 1971. I was involved in a car wreck and evolved into learning about prosthetics because of my own personal experience and background. Deb's story is a little bit different.
Right. I was born without my right forearm and hand, so I have a congenital limb difference. And I'm also an occupational therapist, so elements of function, being able to participate actively and perform well in activities and help all my clients is very important to me.
There's many types of prosthetic technologies that are out there that are still being used, and they continue to evolve. Let's talk a little bit about the types of different types of technology in general that are out there, and you want to start with the first one?
I want to bring up that maybe while we discuss each of these types of technology, we can better inform you to what kinds of function they offer. Some of these devices we actually have to show you, and some of them we may not have to show you, but certainly if you contact us, we can steer you toward resources that will give you pictures and give you valid advice. So the first one is a passive functional aesthetic device, and it's called passive because it doesn't tend to move. It's functional because it allows the person, the user, to engage in what we call social function. So think about being out in public. What's one of the things that most of us do when we're talking to other people? We talk with our hands. Right. When we first meet each other, we engage in different kinds of social rituals. It might be shaking each other's hands. And if you're a person who has lost your right hand, you might choose to use a device that allows you to do that. And it's called aesthetic because it looks like the natural hand.
Yeah, they have technologies now and custom what would be cosmetic or aesthetic functional hands that look exactly, they can make them to look virtually exactly like your other hand. It's a mirror image of your other hand. If you're a woman and you want painted nails, all of that, they can replicate that. These are mostly silicone prostheses. There's a lot of energy and time input into making these, but virtually they can create a prosthesis for you that looks exactly like your other arm. It's passive aesthetic. It's used in a lot of situations where you don't need a lot of bilateral hands-on kind of function.
Yeah, they're typically used to stabilize an object, support objects, and assist a person during bimanual tasks as more like a passive or static assist.
Another very popular style or type of technology is referred to as body power. Now, body power as opposed to what is referred to as external power. An external powered prosthesis typically is one that's powered through an electric motor, batteries, some external source of energy, where a body powered device is literally powered by movements of your body that are captured by the use of what is referred to as a harness and cable system. Deb and I are both wearing body-powered prostheses right now. You can see me opening and closing this device. It might be pretty hard to tell how I'm doing it because it's a very highly efficient device and it operates without not a lot of output of energy on my own. I'm wearing a harness. This is referred to as a figure 9 harness. This one's a little bit more traditional. It uses a metal ring to connect the harness. This loop goes around my opposite shoulder from my affected side, so it's what's referred to as the contralateral side. And then this connects down into a cable system that hooks into my arm. This is a similar figure 9 harness. This one uses a little bit more sophisticated material in that we've replaced the metal ring with a high performance polymer ring. Now, why is that nice? Well, if you're in the airport, you'll appreciate that because there's one less thing to fire off when you're going through the airport monitors. This also uses a plastic rapid adjust buckle, which allows you to adjust the length of this strap, which in fact hooks down into the end of the cable on my arm. So I'm wearing that strap system, and that terminates here and then connects into this cable system, and that's what allows me to operate this prosthesis. So in general, these are referred to as body-powered prostheses. They come with a variety of different types of mechanisms, and we'll talk about those at another point, but body-powered as opposed to externally powered. I've used only body-powered devices throughout my life and activity-specific. Deb, however, has a lot broader experience.
So if you look at both Bob and I, it appears at first glance that we're both wearing almost the same prosthesis, except his is for the left and mine is for the right. We both have carbon fiber. I have a lovely Wonder Woman bracelet on mine. But there are some subtle differences that speak to our personal preferences. Bob already showed you the harness system that he tends to use, and you might have noticed when he pulled up his sleeve, he also wears a liner, which he'll talk about next episode. On my prosthesis, I don't wear a liner. I have a unique socket system that I'll talk about next time, but what I'm going to talk about right now is my harness system. Wearing a prosthesis from such an early age, one of the things I always complained about was the harness. I didn't like the way it felt on my opposite arm. It seemed counterintuitive to have to be using my left arm to operate a prosthesis. The terminal device on the right side, that just didn't seem, natural to me, especially as I aged. And then, of course, because I started wearing a prosthesis at such an early age, by the time I was in my 30s, which I know it looks like that was only a couple years ago, but it was also 30 years ago, I started to develop overuse of my opposite shoulder. And I started to think there's got to be a better way. So I wear something different called the cutaneous anchor. And what I've done through this is eliminate the traditional harness that loops around the opposite axilla. And I wear something that's a plastic patch that adheres to my back through this wonderful tape that I attach to it just like this. And then I take this patch and I stick it onto my back on the same side as my limb difference at about the level of the axilla and just alongside my spine. You can kind of see where it is here. I've attached the harness outside my clothing so that you can see it. But what this allows me to do, instead of using movement from the opposite side or shoulder excursion on both sides, it allows me to just use movement from the right side, my limb-involved side, to be able to actuate my prosthesis.
And a lot of these things they're all very individual. Depending on what kind of range of motion or limited range of motion you have, your prosthetic harness and cable system can be customized to maximize or optimize what body motions you might have. Sometimes people in an injury, they lose a range of motion at the elbow, or maybe they lose range of motion at the shoulder. So the prosthetist, the professional, can work with that particular individual to customize that harness and optimize it so that the most subtle body movements can be used to capture and create what they call excursion of the cable. And excursion of the cable is just movement of the cable. So for myself, I'm doing a particular range of motions. I'm reaching out, I'm rolling my shoulders, I'm bringing my elbow into flexion, and also those motions translate into this movement of the cable. In this particular case, the thumb is just held open with a simple spring, and I'm just pulling it closed, it opens itself. Pulling it closed and open itself. Alternatively, they have this is a voluntary closing device. They have voluntary opening devices, which are more hook-like, and these operate on a cable as well. and these basically are pulled open and closed. So you pull this one open, it closes automatically. Mine is open, I close it automatically, or I close it consciously, it opens automatically. This one closes automatically and you consciously open it. It's just a different type of technology, and you can use these, you can switch back and forth between these types of technology.
Right, there are benefits and drawbacks to each one of them. I wore this style for many, many years. And one of the wonderful aspects of it is that you can engage in very fine motor activities like threading a needle or doing something very small, working with very minute parts. Which can be wonderful. A drawback to it is that the device is in a closed position and you have to work against resistance of the elastic bands to open it. And then even though it can snap closed, the user's strength or grip strength is actually limited by having to equate to the number of elastic bands that a person can wear. And there's only so many elastic bands you can wear.
Yeah, and while we have this here showing, this is actually what we referred to in episode 1 as a prosthesis. So this is a device that fits around the forearm, behind the wrist bones, that you can attach different types of devices to it. So something like this, you could attach, it's got a split hook to it now. You could attach a device for bicycling. You can attach any number of different types of devices to this, and it can be used for an activity-specific, many different kind of activities, but it's only useful for someone with a wrist disarticulation or a partial hand, or someone maybe who has an injured hand, a weak hand, a flail hand. So that's what a prosthesis is, and this is just one particular design of what one of those might look like.
And just to further go on about the terminal device, and another point of the differences or the benefits of a voluntary closing device, because we just described voluntary opening, so this is voluntary closing. So if you think about what does your hand look like at rest in its natural position, usually we find that our hand looks similar to this. It's in a semi-open position, ready for use, ready to close on an object. And if you think about the positioning of the voluntary closing device, it really kind of mirrors that. So it's ready for action is the way I like to think about it. But one of the things I love about this device is that I can control and manage my strength. It's ergonomic, it's efficient because I don't have to work against resistance. It's ready for me to use it. But I can hold something very gently, like my grandson's hand, especially when he was little, or I can really squeeze very hard with this. I've got about 60 pounds of grip strength that I can squeeze if I need to.
These are called, for reference, these are called Grip 5 prehensors. And these are actually the same devices. They're both right or left, and they can be made in lots of different colors and all the same configuration, but different colors and with different inlays and things like that. So it allows you to have your own personal expression about what you might want to look like with something on the end of your arm.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to pick up right here and talk about the myoelectric or externally powered device. So this is my myoelectric device. I'm going to put it on in just a minute, but I just wanted to point out a few of its components. You can see it has a terminal device. This one has a multi-articulating hand. Inside that, what you can't see is where the battery and all the wires are, all the controls for it. I've got my on-off switch. And then inside the socket, I have a bunch of sensors. So putting this device on, because I have a silicone socket, which we'll talk about next time, I usually need to use a little bit of lubrication. And there are certain kinds that I like. This is just one, and this is your basic Purell hand sanitizer. I'm going to slide my residual limb right into that socket, turn it on, and by pulsing certain muscles, this hand I need to use it. By pulsing certain muscles, I can either close the hand or open it. So when I'm firing my flexors, it closes the hand. When I'm firing my extensors, it opens the hand.
It's actually sensing signals right through your skin. So It's not working on magic, it's not working on brain waves. You're actually, Deb is actually triggering muscles in her forearm, like closing and opening the hand that she doesn't have, and those signals are picked up and amplified, and they work like light switches. They make that hand go through different motions or go through different operations.
Right, right. And so this system is a basic and two-site system, which is probably one of the most common. Another technology that's on the market to help with control is called pattern recognition. That's something we'll talk about in a future episode, but pattern recognition is something that uses a configuration of the muscle signals from all the muscles in the residual limb, where those sensors are attached, and it uses those very unique nuances to control the terminal device, which can also include a wrist unit or an elbow unit, depending on the level of loss or absence. One other thing I think that's very important to know is that these devices can not just control the open and close, but in pattern recognition, and even a system like this, once it's properly programmed, it can manage your change in grip patterns as well.
Another type of prosthesis that has become really popular in the last 10 years has been referred to as activity specific. And so a person might be wearing a body powered hand, they might be wearing an electric hand, and this technology may not be the most appropriate for a particular activity. Let's say I want to ride a bicycle, let's say I want to go swimming. I might want to put on something that looks like this. So what is this? This is a short sports prosthesis. A shorty sports prosthesis, and on the end of this I might be able to put a swimming paddle, which is designed specifically for this particular prosthesis because it allows the swimming paddle to be placed closer to my end of my arm, and I have better control over it. So this is a very specific activity-specific prosthesis that's used in the water for swimming. You could also put other devices onto it, but because of the short forearm, it's applicable mostly to water-type activities. But that's an example of a very activity-specific type prosthesis. My prosthesis and the wrist technology, we can take these things literally right on and off. So I can turn this into an activity-specific prosthesis simply by changing out a device on the end of it. This one is called a hammerhead. This is our newest model hammerhead. It just came out. It'll be coming out in 2024. And the hammerhead is used for kayaking specifically, and weightlifting and other things, but it was designed primarily for handling a kayak-type paddle. So many people who have an electric limb, for instance, and don't use body power as well, will have another prosthesis made specifically for particular activities. Let's say you like to weightlift, or you like to play tennis, you like to do some activities that require a lot of aggressive use of your prosthesis. The electric prosthesis may not be the best choice. Much like a fine calculator or a phone, the electric prosthesis has a lot of delicate circuitry and sensors in it. You might want to not use it. Its best application may not be use it for swinging a baseball bat or using a hockey stick. You want to use it for its best suited purposes, and you want to have a separate activity-specific prosthesis that you can really beat up, that you can really take the task, and you can do all those aggressive, rigorous activities with, and that way you're going to get the best life out of all of your prosthetic devices. You know, in my opinion, a person always needs more than one prosthesis. They need two or more prostheses. It's like you just don't want to be without a hand. So you need a spare, and or you need a couple different types of technologies. And that'll just give you a better opportunity to be able to have a more fulfilling lifestyle and be able to engage in more things.
Exactly. One of the things that I like about activity-specific devices, not just that I can switch out my terminal device really quickly, but I like that it's lightweight. So in my activity-specific device, it's made of, instead of having a solid forearm, like Bob has, mine is using something called Nexo struts. And these are great because they're robust. I can do lots of different activities with them, but it's also lightweight. So on my very short residual limb, I don't have the feeling of a lot of weight hanging off the end of this arm that I then have to support.
And this gives her the freedom, because she's not wearing any harness. This activity-specific prosthesis is self-suspending on the elbow, on the bones of her elbow. Gives her a lot greater range of motion, so she can do maybe more activities just with greater proficiency. Right.
Plus, if I'm using this at night, I don't know if you can see this, but mine lights up. So I've got a built-in flashlight or lightsaber.
The final thing we wanted to talk about with the information slide we have behind us is the word hybrids and crossovers. So hybrids essentially the term hybrid has been used when they talk about combining different kinds of technical prosthetic components. So a hybrid prosthesis, let's say you have a transhumeral limb absence. You might have an electric powered elbow and still use a body powered hand, or vice versa. You might have an electric hand and a body powered elbow. It's called a hybrid. A hybrid is a mixing of different technologies, and they can be any number of different kinds of technologies.
Right. Well, you even talked about in episode 1 how the prosthesis is a hybrid technology because it's combining aspects of a prosthesis with aspects of an orthosis to create this very new hybrid kind of device.
And then crossover. So what we use crossover technology. Deb and I developed that reference to describe different kinds of devices that might be used for crossover activities. In other words, this hammerhead, as we refer to it, was designed primarily for kayaking and water sports involving using a kayak paddle. But we found it can be used on brooms, it can be used on shovels. So it's a crossover usage. Even though it's been designed for something very specific, it has a far broader use. And that's important when you talk about insurance, because in many cases you're limited in how many of these types of technologies you can have available, and if you can get a device that has hybrid crossover uses, it can help justify. It can just help devise the function and such of the device. So again, hybrid and crossover meaning typically a device that can be used for multiple types of tasks.
Right.
That type of thing.
I think what Bob is referring to is that many insurance companies and even well-intended practitioners do not realize that the importance of recreation. So therefore, insurance companies oftentimes do not cover recreational devices or devices that are perceived to have only a recreational purpose or function. So by showing that these devices can be used for many other things, that tasks that we do on an everyday basis, tasks that typically require 2 hands to complete effectively, we can utilize or repurpose this technology so that we get the best of both worlds. With this kind of device, not only can I perform household tasks, but I can ride my bike easier because it's got a swivel. I can also use it at the grocery store to push a cart. That's nice because sometimes I don't want to be wearing a heavy device, or maybe I'm taking a break from wearing a body power, or I was out in my garden and then running an errand, so I have a different device on. So knowing that I can use it for multiple purposes increases its value. And by increasing its value, it also helps to improve my quality of life.
Exactly. So we want to talk a little bit in finishing up this episode about different ways prostheses are made. So this particular arm that I have is a more traditionally laminated. This one is made out of carbon fiber, but it's layers of fabric typically that cover foam or some substrate underneath, and they're very strong, very lightweight. And you can build a carbon arm that doesn't necessarily have to look black on the outside. Your prosthetic facility can create another sheath over this and laminate it in any kind of color you want. They can decoupage it, they can put decals on it, they can do any number of things that allow you to express yourself however you might want through your prostheses. So traditional laminated, this is a technique that's very hand intensive, very labor intensive for the prosthetist, and they actually create a prosthesis and with layers of fabric impregnated with different kind of resins that cure to be very hard but yet strong and very, very lightweight. There's another type of prosthesis that's made typically, it's called vacuum formed, where they create the socket in the prosthesis, they heat up large sheets of plastic and then they mold them over the form of your arm and they pull them down with a vacuum. They're called vacuum form type thermoplastic prostheses. So depending on the type of prosthesis being built for you and the facility that you're working with, there may be a variety of different types of options that they use. And the prosthetist, it's worth exploring that with your provider to ask them how they do their work. You know, are they a certified upper extremity professional, and how are they going to build your arm? Finally, there's what they call now more in just the last few years, what they call a 3D printed or additive manufactured prostheses. And these are still evolving. You've learned about 3D printing technology, and they're making parts in machines where they actually use materials and they print them in layers. The technology itself is done. There's lots of different ways of doing it, but they're starting to make prostheses now with additive techniques and additive materials. And as those materials evolve and get better and become materials get stronger, they're going to be used more and more in prostheses themselves. But you can use all of these different techniques. You can use a laminated prosthesis, a 3D printed, or maybe a vacuum. They're just the ways of making a prosthesis. They can still be a body-powered prosthesis, or it could be an electric arm. There's just different ways of making them with different materials. Sure. So, and it's important for you to understand what the prosthetist is going to use, because there's options out there, and you might find that one particular option you would favor over another. So it's important for you to learn about, the different materials and things that are out there.
Yeah, you said something really important just now that seems to be important for our viewers to better understand. These devices that we're showing you, they're not available off a shelf. It's not like buying a pair of shoes. These are devices that are custom made for us. And we get to speak into not just the design of these devices, but also what's included in them, what components they're going to be used and made from.
So that ends episode 2. We want you to stay tuned. We're going to talk to you in this next episode about some extra special important things that you need to know about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about more technology, but focusing on the sockets and the interfaces. And that's because many times what we see out here is what we use to interact with our environment, and it's what the public sees first about us, right? But what we're perceiving through the socket is so much more intimate and really speaks to our personal success with our prosthesis. And we're going to talk more about that next episode.
Yeah, the socket and interface are the most important things about your entire prosthesis, because if they're not made correctly and fabricated correctly, and they don't give you the comfort and suspension and security you need, it doesn't matter what you put on the end of them, you're not going to be able to do very much with that prosthesis.
Yeah, you're gonna save the rest for next episode, right?
I'm Bob Radocy.
I'm Debi Latour. And you can feel free to contact us at the information that you see here. Bob can be reached at bobradocy@gmail.com, and I can be found at singlehandedsolutions@gmail.com.
And we're actually powered by these 2 logos here at the bottom, Instinctive Invention LLC and Deb's company, Single Handed Solutions. Thank you.